Marcus Whitmore stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching the city sprawl beneath him like a glittering circuit board. At 45, he commanded a financial empire worth over $300 million, owned properties on 4 continents, and could buy anything his heart desired. The problem was his heart desired nothing at all. The irony wasn't lost on him as he returned to his mahogany desk, surrounded by awards and accolades that felt as cold as the marble floors of his mansion. He had conquered every business challenge, climbed every mountain of success, yet felt more hollow than the day he'd started. His ex-wife had taken half his assets and all his illusions about love 5 years ago. His 2 adult children called only when they needed money, treating him like a human ATM with a guilt complex. The only constant presence in his sterile world was Maria Santos, his housekeeper of 4 years. She was a woman in her early 50s with silver-streaked hair always pulled into a neat bun and dark eyes that seemed to hold depths he'd never bothered to explore. She moved through his 15,000-square-foot mansion like a whisper, maintaining perfect order while remaining virtually invisible to him. But lately, Marcus had begun noticing things about Maria that he'd previously overlooked. The way she hummed softly while polishing furniture, filling the oppressive silence with melodies that seemed to carry stories from another world. How she always arranged fresh flowers in his study, even though he'd never requested them and rarely acknowledged their presence. Small gestures that suggested a warmth he'd forgotten could exist in his carefully controlled environment. On a crisp October evening, as golden sunlight slanted through his study windows, Marcus found himself watching Maria prepare to leave for the day. She gathered her worn leather purse, checked that everything was in order, and walked toward the service entrance with the same purposeful stride she'd maintained for 4 years. Something about her demeanor sparked an unfamiliar curiosity in him. For the first time in decades, Marcus felt genuinely interested in another human being's life beyond their utility to him. Where did Maria go when she left his antiseptic world? What life awaited her beyond the wrought iron gates of his estate? Acting on an impulse he couldn't fully understand, Marcus grabbed his car keys and decided to follow her. His midnight blue Bentley felt absurdly conspicuous as he trailed her modest Toyota Camry through the winding roads that led away from his exclusive neighborhood. She drove with careful precision, stopping completely at every sign, signaling well in advance of turns, maintaining exactly the speed limit. Maria's route took them through progressively more modest neighborhoods. Manicured estates gave way to middle-class subdivisions, which eventually transitioned into areas where apartment buildings showed their age and corner stores had barred windows. Marcus felt increasingly uncomfortable as they ventured into parts of the city he'd spent his entire adult life avoiding. She finally parked outside a weathered apartment complex that looked like it had been built in the 70s and maintained with hope rather than adequate funding. Marcus positioned his car where he could observe without being noticed, watching as Maria climbed external stairs to a second-floor unit. Through thin curtains, he could see her silhouette moving around inside what appeared to be a small, cramped space. He sat in his luxury vehicle for nearly an hour, questioning his own behavior. The rational part of his mind insisted this was inappropriate, a violation of Maria's privacy. But something deeper kept him anchored to that parking spot, as if he were waiting for the answer to a question he hadn't yet learned to ask. Just as Marcus was preparing to leave, feeling foolish about his amateur surveillance, Maria emerged from the building. She wasn't alone. A young boy, perhaps 9 or 10 years old, walked beside her. He was small for his age, with intelligent eyes and clothes that were clean but obviously second-hand. Maria held his hand protectively as they approached her car. Marcus followed them again, his curiosity now burning with an intensity that surprised him. They drove to a community center in an even more run-down section of the city. The building looked tired, its brick facade stained and cracking, but warm yellow light poured from its windows like hope made visible. Unable to resist getting a closer look, Marcus parked and approached the building on foot. Through large windows, he could see Maria inside, surrounded by children of various ages. She was reading aloud from a colorful picture book, her voice animated as she brought characters to life with different accents and expressions. The boy who'd accompanied her sat in the front row, completely captivated. As Marcus moved to get a better view, he realized this wasn't simply story time. Maria had workbooks and papers spread across small tables, and the children were engaged in what appeared to be structured learning activities. Some were working on math problems, others practicing reading, still others carefully forming letters on lined paper. "Excuse me, can I help you?" a woman's voice said behind him. Marcus turned to find an African-American woman in her 30s approaching. She wore jeans and a sweater that had seen better years, but her smile was warm and her eyes held the particular kindness of someone who'd chosen to work with children. "I'm sorry for lurking out here," Marcus said, feeling embarrassed. "I work with Maria Santos, and I saw her here. I was curious about what she does." The woman's expression immediately brightened. "Oh, you know Maria. She's absolutely amazing. I'm Carmen Washington, the community center coordinator. Are you here to volunteer for the tutoring program?" "Tutoring program?" Maria started it about 2.5 years ago. She comes here Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday evenings to help kids with homework and basic academic skills. Most of these children are from single-parent households where English isn't the primary language, or their parents work multiple jobs and can't provide educational support at home. Marcus felt something fundamental shift in his chest. She started this program herself? Completely on her own initiative. She was volunteering here occasionally when she noticed how many neighborhood kids were struggling academically. So she approached me about renting classroom space and creating a structured tutoring program. She pays the rent herself, buys all the supplies with her own money, and donates her time 3 evenings every week. Carmen gestured toward the window where Maria was helping a little girl sound out words in a beginning reader. "That boy who came with her tonight is David. His mother works cleaning office buildings from 10 at night until 6 in the morning. Maria basically adopted him into the program when his grades were failing. In 18 months, he's gone from barely reading at a first-grade level to testing above grade level in all subjects." Marcus stared through the window at Maria with completely new eyes. Here was a woman who earned a modest hourly wage cleaning his house, yet she was investing her own limited resources into transforming children's futures. While he sat in his mansion contemplating his existential emptiness, she was out here creating tangible change in young lives. "The program has outgrown our space," Carmen continued. "We have 68 children on our waiting list, but Maria can only work with 15 at a time in this room. She's constantly talking about finding a larger facility, but commercial rent in this area has tripled in the past 2 years. Even rundown spaces are beyond what she can afford on a housekeeper's salary. What other resources does she need?" Marcus asked, surprising himself with the question. "More qualified tutors would be wonderful, but we can't pay anyone. Computers would make a huge difference since most of these kids don't have internet access at home. Updated textbooks, educational software, maybe some science equipment for the older students. Maria brings whatever she can scrape together, but it's never enough for all the children who desperately need help." Through the window, Marcus watched Maria celebrate with David as he successfully completed a challenging math problem. Her face radiated pure joy at his achievement, and she high-fived him with enthusiasm that made the other children laugh and cheer. Marcus realized he was witnessing something he'd never seen in his own world, authentic human connection motivated by nothing more than caring. "How long do her sessions typically run?" Marcus asked. 7 to 9:30, usually. She stays late if kids need extra help. Last week, she spent an additional hour with a high school student working on a college application essay. Maria never watches the clock when children need her. That evening, Marcus drove home in a state of profound contemplation. He sat in his study until dawn, staring at the fresh flowers Maria had arranged on his desk, seeing them with completely different understanding. They weren't just decorative touches, they were expressions of someone who believed in bringing beauty and hope into the world, even when that world had given her every reason to become cynical. The next morning, Maria arrived for work precisely on schedule. Marcus observed her from his study window, noticing details he'd previously ignored. Her shoes were worn but meticulously polished. Her uniform was old but pressed and spotless. She carried herself with quiet dignity, moving through her tasks with the same careful attention she brought to everything else. When she brought his morning coffee, Marcus did something unprecedented in their 4-year working relationship. He looked directly into her eyes and said, "Thank you, Maria, for everything you do here and everywhere else." She seemed genuinely startled by the personal acknowledgement. "Of course, Mr. Whitmore. Is there something specific you need today?" "Actually, yes. I'd like to have a conversation with you about something personal, if you're comfortable with that." Maria set down the coffee service, her expression becoming cautious. They'd never exchanged more than brief, work-related pleasantries in all their time together. "I happened to be in your neighborhood last evening and saw you at the community center, working with the children." Color drained from Maria's face. "Mr. Whitmore, I want to assure you that my volunteer work never interferes with my responsibilities here. I complete all my duties before leaving, and I've never been late or absent because of outside commitments. I'm not questioning your work here, Maria. Your performance has always been exemplary. I was actually deeply impressed by what I observed at the community center." "I don't understand what you mean, sir." Marcus gestured toward the seating area of his study. "Would you mind sitting down for a moment? I'd like to learn more about your tutoring program." Maria hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the unusual request, but eventually sat on the edge of a leather chair. Her posture remained formal, hands folded in her lap. "I help neighborhood children with their schoolwork," she said quietly. "Many parents work multiple jobs or don't speak enough English to assist with homework. The children were falling behind academically, and I thought I might be able to make a small difference. Carmen told me you fund this program entirely yourself." "It's not a large expense," Maria said quickly, as if apologizing for spending her own money on others. "Just room rental and basic supplies. Paper, pencils, workbooks, occasionally some educational games. The children bring their homework, so mostly they need someone to explain concepts and provide encouragement." Marcus studied her face, seeing determination mixed with vulnerability. "How many children are you currently helping?" 15 regularly, but there's a long waiting list. I have to turn families away because there isn't adequate space or resources. Some nights I lie awake thinking about children who are struggling with their studies, falling further behind, and I can't help them because of limitations I can't overcome." The genuine pain in her voice affected Marcus more than any business setback ever had. Here was someone who lost sleep worrying about other people's children, while he lost sleep worrying about profit margins and market fluctuations. "What would you need to help more children?" he asked. Maria's eyes brightened momentarily before dimming with reality. "A larger space would allow me to serve more families, but rent for anything bigger would be prohibitively expensive. More educational materials would be wonderful. Computers would open up so many learning opportunities, since most of these children don't have technology access at home. And additional tutors would be incredible, people who could help with subjects I'm not qualified to teach or who speak the children's native languages. What if financial constraints weren't an issue? I'm afraid I don't understand what you're suggesting." Marcus rose and moved to his window, looking out at grounds that cost more to maintain each month than most families earned in a year. "Maria, I've spent 3 decades accumulating wealth. I have more money than I could reasonably spend in multiple lifetimes, yet I've never used it for anything that genuinely mattered. You take your modest income and invest it in transforming children's lives. You've discovered real purpose in serving others, while I've found only emptiness in serving myself." He turned to face her directly. "I want to help you expand your program significantly. I want to fund a proper educational center for your community." Maria's eyes widened in shock. "Mr. Whitmore, I couldn't possibly accept such generosity. It wouldn't be appropriate. Please hear me out completely. I've been thinking about this all night. I want to establish a real learning center in your neighborhood. A facility where you could serve 100 children or more. I want to provide computers, educational software, comprehensive library resources, science equipment, whatever you believe would most benefit the students. I want to hire qualified teachers to work with you." Tears began forming in Maria's eyes. "Why would you want to do this? These aren't your children or your community." "Because in 4 years of working in my home, you're the only person who's shown me what genuine goodness looks like. You've been bringing flowers to my study not because it was required, but because you wanted to add beauty to my environment. You've been humming while you work because you carry joy within you, even while surrounded by wealth you'll never possess. And you've been spending your hard-earned money on children who aren't your relatives because you believe in their potential." Marcus felt emotion stirring that he'd suppressed for years. "I followed you yesterday because I was curious about your life outside these walls. What I discovered was that you go places where you're genuinely needed, where you can create meaningful change. I realized that despite all my business success, I've never made a real difference in anyone's life. You've shown me what that actually means." Maria wiped her eyes with her apron. "This is so unexpected and generous. I don't know how to respond. Say you'll let me help. Say you'll allow me to be part of something meaningful for the first time in my adult life." Over the following months, Marcus immersed himself in the project with enthusiasm he hadn't experienced in decades. He purchased an abandoned department store in Maria's neighborhood and hired architects to transform it into a state-of-the-art learning facility. The renovation included modern classrooms, a computer lab, science laboratory, library, arts and crafts area, and spaces for various educational activities. More importantly, he began understanding the community Maria served. He met single mothers balancing multiple jobs to support their families, elderly grandparents raising grandchildren while learning English themselves, recent immigrants working toward citizenship while pursuing education. He learned about systemic barriers these families faced, generational cycles of limited opportunity, and the remarkable resilience of people determined to create better futures for their children. Maria became his guide into this world, introducing him to families with respect and dignity. She never made him feel like a wealthy outsider performing charity work for personal satisfaction. Instead, she helped him recognize the strength, wisdom, and beauty in lives shaped by experiences vastly different from his privileged background. The opening day of the Maria Santos Learning Center exceeded everyone's expectations. Marcus watched from the back of the main classroom as nearly 200 children and family members toured the facility. The building hummed with excitement and possibility. Rows of new computers waited to open digital worlds, library shelves filled with books in multiple languages promised adventures and knowledge, and bright classrooms offered safe spaces for growth and discovery. Maria moved through the celebration like a beloved teacher returning home, embracing children she'd worked with, conversing with parents in English and Spanish, her entire being radiating happiness and pride. Marcus observed David, the boy he'd first seen that October evening, demonstrating the science lab equipment to his younger cousins with obvious confidence and enthusiasm. "You made this happen," Marcus said when Maria finally approached him during the festivities. "We made this happen together," she corrected gently, then paused thoughtfully. "But I need you to understand something important. This isn't just about the financial resources you provided, though they made everything possible. You've transformed during these months. Working with these families, learning about their challenges and dreams, becoming part of this community, you've become a completely different person." Marcus realized she was absolutely correct. Somewhere during the process, he'd stopped thinking of himself as an outsider doing charitable work. These people had become his neighbors, their children's success had become his personal investment, their struggles had become his motivation. He'd begun shopping at neighborhood stores, eating at local restaurants, attending community meetings, learning Spanish phrases from the children. "Maria, I have a proposal for you," Marcus said. "I want to offer you the position of executive director of this learning center. Full-time, with a salary reflecting the true importance of your work, comprehensive benefits, and complete authority to develop programs however you think best." Maria's eyes filled with surprise and emotion. "What about your household needs? I can hire another housekeeper without difficulty. But I cannot hire another Maria Santos. This community needs your leadership, your heart, your dedication. And truthfully, so do I. You've taught me what it means to live with genuine purpose. 1 year later, Marcus stood in his new, modest home just 6 blocks from the Learning Center, reviewing progress reports that filled him with more satisfaction than any quarterly earnings statement ever had. The center now served over 300 children annually, with Maria leading a team of 12 full-time educators and dozens of community volunteers. David had become Marcus's special mentoring focus. Now a confident 6th grader with exceptional mathematical abilities, the boy reminded Marcus of his younger self. But unlike his own childhood, David was surrounded by adults who valued both academic achievement and character development, who celebrated his successes while keeping him grounded in community values. "Mr. Marcus." David called out as he rushed into the center after school one Friday afternoon. "Look what came in the mail." Marcus examined the official letter David presented with obvious excitement. It was an acceptance notification for a prestigious summer mathematics program at the local university, full scholarship included. "This is outstanding, David. You've earned this opportunity through your hard work and dedication. Miss Maria says you're going to help me prepare for high school next year, and maybe even early college classes if I keep improving. If advanced education is what you want to pursue, we'll ensure you have every possible opportunity to succeed." David grinned and ran off to share his news with friends. Marcus watched him go, marveling at the complete transformation of his own life. 18 months earlier, he'd been a man with unlimited financial resources and no meaningful purpose. Now he was someone with sufficient wealth and abundance in every way that truly mattered. Maria approached carrying enrollment applications and program evaluations. "We have 97 families on our expansion waiting list," she reported with a mixture of pride and concern. "Word about our success rates has spread throughout the region. Parents are relocating to this neighborhood specifically so their children can attend our programs." "Then we grow again," Marcus responded immediately. "Or better yet, we help other communities establish their own centers. What would you think about creating a replicable model that could be implemented in neighborhoods throughout the state?" Her eyes lit up with the same passionate enthusiasm he'd witnessed that first evening through the community center window. "You mean developing a network of community learning centers?" "Exactly. We could train dedicated individuals to replicate what you've accomplished here, provide startup funding and ongoing support, create an entire system of neighborhood-based educational centers." Maria was quiet for a long moment, then smiled with the warmth that had initially captured Marcus's curiosity about her character. "You realize what this means, don't you?" "What do you mean?" "It means you can never return to your old life. Once you've experienced what's possible when people genuinely care about each other, when they invest in children's futures instead of just stock portfolios, when they build communities instead of just accumulating personal assets, there's no returning to isolation and meaninglessness." Marcus surveyed the bustling learning center, taking in scenes of children working intently with volunteer tutors, parents attending citizenship classes in adjacent rooms, teenagers collaborating on college applications with dreams that now seemed entirely achievable. He thought about his empty mansion, his hollow business victories, his years of profound loneliness despite unlimited material resources. "I have absolutely no desire to go back," he said with complete certainty. "This is exactly where I belong, exactly who I was meant to become." That evening, as the center was closing for the day, Marcus helped Maria lock up the facility. They walked out together into the neighborhood that had become his true home. The streets weren't pristine like his former exclusive enclave, but they were alive with authentic human connection. Families gathered on front porches sharing stories of their day, children played games in small parks, elderly couples walked hand in hand discussing dreams they were still pursuing together. "Maria, there's something I've wondered about for months," Marcus said as they reached her car. "What's that?" "That very first day when I told you about wanting to help expand your program, you didn't question my motives or seem suspicious of my intentions. Most people would have been skeptical of a wealthy stranger offering to fund their project. Why did you trust me so readily?" Maria was quiet for several moments, considering her response carefully. Because I had been observing you for 4 years, Mr. Marcus. Not in any intrusive way, but as someone who worked in your home, I couldn't help but notice things about your character and your emotional state. She leaned against her car, looking thoughtful. I saw you sitting alone in that enormous house every evening, surrounded by expensive possessions but no genuine joy or companionship. I witnessed the sadness in your eyes when you thought no one was watching, the way you would stare out windows as if searching for something you couldn't identify. I heard the loneliness in your voice during the rare phone conversations you had with your children. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. You saw all of that? I recognized the signs because I had experienced something similar myself, years ago. After my husband died and my own children moved far away for their careers, I went through a period where I felt completely disconnected from purpose and meaning. I had a job, I had a small apartment, I had enough money to survive, but I felt like I was just existing rather than truly living. Maria's voice grew softer as she continued. It wasn't until I started volunteering with children that I rediscovered what it meant to feel genuinely useful, to know that my presence in the world made a positive difference. I could see that you were hungry for that same sense of purpose, that same connection to something larger than yourself. So you knew I wasn't offering help out of guilt or some tax advantage. I knew you were a man who had achieved everything society tells us we should want, yet you had somehow missed the experiences that actually create fulfillment and happiness. When you offered to help expand the tutoring program, I could see in your eyes that you weren't looking for recognition or praise. You were looking for a way to matter, a way to contribute something meaningful to the world. Marcus stood in the gathering dusk, overwhelmed by Maria's insight and compassion. You gave me exactly what I needed without me even knowing I needed it. We gave each other what we needed, Maria corrected gently. You provided the resources that allowed our small program to become something transformational for hundreds of families. But you also brought fresh perspective, business expertise, and connections that have made our impact sustainable and scalable. This partnership has been beneficial for everyone involved. As they said goodnight and Maria drove away, Marcus walked the 6 blocks to his modest ranch house, reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought him to this point. His former mansion sat empty now, officially on the market, though he wasn't particularly concerned about when it might sell. The house that had once felt like a monument to his success now seemed like a mausoleum of missed opportunities and misplaced priorities. His current home was less than a tenth the size of his former residence, but it felt infinitely more welcoming and comfortable. The walls were covered with photographs from learning center events, thank you cards from students and their families, certificates of achievement from children he had mentored personally. His refrigerator was decorated with artwork created by kids in the center's after-school programs, crayon drawings that meant more to him than any expensive painting he had previously owned. The following Monday morning brought news that filled Marcus with particular pride. Carmen from the original community center called to inform him that their model was being studied by education researchers from 3 major universities. The combination of community-based tutoring, family engagement, cultural sensitivity, and comprehensive support services was producing academic outcomes that surpassed many well-funded government programs. We're getting calls from communities in 7 different states, Carmen explained during their phone conversation. Everyone wants to know how to replicate what you and Maria have accomplished here. The academic improvements are impressive, but what's really capturing attention is the broader community development that has occurred around the learning center. Marcus knew exactly what she meant. The center had become a catalyst for neighborhood revitalization that extended far beyond educational services. Local businesses had started hiring graduates from their programs, creating pathways to economic advancement for entire families. Community gardens had sprouted in vacant lots, organized by parents who had met through center activities. A small business incubator had formed, supporting entrepreneurs from the neighborhood who were launching ventures that served local needs. Property values had stabilized and begun increasing, but not in a way that displaced long-time residents. Instead, the improvements attracted families who shared the community's values and wanted to contribute to its continued growth. It was gentrification driven by residents themselves rather than outside developers, creating positive change while preserving the neighborhood's character and affordability. That afternoon, Marcus received a visitor at the learning center who would alter his perspective once again. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was a professor of education policy at the state university, and she had been tracking their program's outcomes for 8 months. She requested a meeting to discuss her findings and a proposal that would expand their impact exponentially. "What you've created here defies conventional wisdom about educational intervention," Dr. Rodriguez explained as they sat in Maria's office. "Most programs focus on either academic remediation or enrichment activities, but rarely both simultaneously. Your model addresses the whole child within the context of family and community systems, which creates sustainable change rather than temporary improvements." She opened her laptop and displayed charts showing the academic progress of students who had participated in their programs for various lengths of time. Children who have been here for 2 years or more are performing at levels that exceed state averages across all demographic categories. More importantly, they're maintaining those gains as they progress through school, which suggests deep learning rather than superficial test preparation. Marcus studied the data with the same intensity he had once applied to financial reports. "What accounts for these results?" "Several factors working in combination," Dr. Rodriguez replied. "The high adult-to-student ratio allows for individualized attention that addresses specific learning gaps. The multicultural staff provides cultural bridges that help children navigate between home and school environments. The family engagement component ensures that learning extends beyond center hours. And the community connections create networks of support that reinforce academic values." Maria joined the conversation from her desk across the room. "We also emphasize character development alongside academic achievement. Children learn that intelligence and kindness aren't mutually exclusive, that success includes lifting others up rather than just advancing yourself." "Which brings me to my proposal," Dr. Rodriguez continued. "The Department of Education has allocated funding for innovative education models that can be scaled across multiple communities. Based on our documentation of your program's effectiveness, I believe we could secure a multi-million-dollar grant to establish 25 similar centers over the next 3 years." Marcus felt his pulse quicken with excitement. 25 centers serving how many children? Potentially 8,000 to 10,000 students annually, with their families also receiving support services. The economic impact on those communities could be transformational, creating cycles of opportunity instead of cycles of limitation. Over the following weeks, Marcus, Maria, and Dr. Rodriguez developed a comprehensive proposal that outlined their replication strategy. They would identify communities with demographics similar to their neighborhood, recruit and train local leaders who shared Maria's commitment and vision, provide startup funding and ongoing technical assistance, and establish quality standards that ensured consistent outcomes across all sites. The proposal process required Marcus to articulate aspects of their work that he had previously taken for granted. Writing about the importance of treating families with dignity and respect, regardless of their economic circumstances, forced him to confront his own former prejudices and assumptions. Describing the leadership development that occurred when community members were empowered to solve their own problems made him realize how much his own leadership style had evolved through this experience. When the federal grant was approved 6 months later, awarding them $4.7 million over 4 years, Marcus experienced a form of satisfaction that dwarfed any business achievement from his previous life. This wasn't success measured by personal accumulation, but by the multiplication of opportunity for thousands of families who had been systematically excluded from pathways to advancement. The grant announcement celebration at their learning center drew over 500 community members, local officials, education leaders, and media representatives. As Marcus watched Maria address the crowd in both English and Spanish, explaining how their local experiment was becoming a national model, he marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. David, now in 8th grade and already taking high school mathematics courses, served as the student representative for the ceremony. His remarks about the impact of the center on his educational trajectory and his family's economic stability brought tears to many eyes, including Marcus's own. "Before I started coming here, I thought smart kids were just lucky," David said into the microphone with confidence that belied his age. "I didn't understand that intelligence could be developed through hard work and good teaching. Miss Maria and Mr. Marcus showed me that my background didn't have to determine my future, but my choices and effort could create possibilities I had never imagined. As the evening wound down and the crowd began to disperse, Marcus found himself standing with Maria in the main classroom where it all began. The room was decorated with student artwork, achievement certificates, college acceptance letters from former participants, and photographs documenting 4 years of growth and celebration. When I followed you home that October evening, I never could have imagined where that curiosity would lead, Marcus said, his voice filled with wonder. I don't think either of us could have predicted this outcome, Maria replied. But perhaps that's the nature of meaningful work. When you start with genuine care for others and willingness to act on that care, possibilities emerge that exceed your original vision. Marcus nodded, understanding that their story was really about the power of seeing and responding to human potential that others might overlook or dismiss. We're going to change thousands of lives with this expansion. And they're going to change us in return, Maria added with the wisdom that had first captured his attention. That's the beautiful reciprocity of authentic service. We give what we can, and we receive gifts we never expected. Standing in that classroom surrounded by evidence of transformed lives and expanded possibilities, Marcus felt a deep sense of completion that had nothing to do with finishing a project and everything to do with discovering his authentic purpose. He had finally become the person he was meant to be, not through accumulating more wealth or achievements, but through using his resources to unlock potential in others. The story that began with a wealthy man's idle curiosity about his housekeeper's after-work activities had evolved into a movement that would eventually serve communities across the nation. But at its heart, it remained a simple tale of two people who found in each other the catalyst for becoming their best selves while creating opportunities for others to do the same.